right. Welcome back, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to another weekly update where my goal is to keep you ahead of the intersection of business technology and human experience. I'm looking forward to this, and thanks everybody who listens, watches these. Always appreciate your engagement, your feedback, all that other stuff. And if you like these, please give it a review, rating, whatever, or share it with a friend. Get the message out there. That is my ask to all of you. Like usual, I have got a rundown on some of the hottest things happening since I recorded last week's. And yeah, no shortage of no shortage of stuff going on. So I'm not going to waste any more time and just get right into it. If you've been following the space, or even if you haven't, you might have heard about SearchGPT, real creative on the naming function here. OpenAI is coming hard for the search industry. They launched, it's not launched, it's still in beta, but SearchGPT, they've done some, press releases and kind of what it is. And, there's all the headlines about, hey, it's coming for Google, it's coming for Bing, it's coming for all of this stuff. And the thing that was interesting about this is when they came out, it was presented like this new and novel thing, which it isn't necessarily. If you've played around with the search engines, you may have seen if you Google something, and actually you won't now, unless maybe it's just me, but over the past few months, if you Googled something, you might have noticed, or if you Binged something, if that's even a term, you might have noticed like it gives you kind of an AI curated response to whatever your prompt is. And they've actually pulled back on a lot of that for good reasons. So I have mixed feelings about generative AI search. I think we're definitely going to see more of it. I think we're going to see it continue to evolve. OpenAI clearly is fully invested in this. But I think the concerns I have about this is where this could go, like with so many technological innovations, is it could make us just dumber and more tribal and isolated. It could make us better. And I just don't know where we're going to go with it. Now, if you've played around with some of the, search capability, or if you ever saw a Google search and it showed some of the AI responses to it, I think one of the things that is lacking from some of this, and I think this is where it can lead to some of this isolation or tribalism, is that, now it's giving more robust responses to your questions, and it's giving it in a way that sounds a lot more authoritative. It's almost like now, with these advanced search capabilities and Gen AI being built into it, it's almost like if you go ask a simple question, you're going to get a very comprehensive answer in a very authoritative sounding way. And that could be helpful if you already know what you're looking for, and it's something that's rather innocuous, and you're trying to just kind of find some details, and maybe, hey, now it's giving me a little more context as to why this is the answer that it gave me, and these other things, which maybe before you didn't, and you'd have to sift through all the search results and other stuff like this. Where it gives me a little concern regarding just the human behavior standpoint is we don't, as a species, typically do a good job of saying, I want to truly understand holistically what really is going into the answer to this question. And how have people who maybe think differently than me thought about it? And how have others considered this? And what all goes into that? We want the just simple answer, and we often want the simple answer that validates what we already think. And so when I think about Gen AI and it being combined with search, I get a little nervous that could it be something where you ask it a question and it actually presents you with, hey, this is a complicated answer, and here's some things that should be considered, and here's kind of both sides of what this might be, and where would you like more information on this, to actually force you to critically think through some of that. If it goes that direction, I think it'd be great, because I think that would be even better than what we have today, where you just search and maybe you search for a very, narrow-minded response, and you just find sites that validate those narrow-minded responses. Could Gen AI go, you search for this, but I'm actually going to present you with a more holistic, nuanced response to what you just asked for, just to make sure you're seeing things clearly? I think that could be really helpful. Unfortunately, I don't think that has a lot of consumer appetite, because at the end of the day, I think people would go, that's not what I asked for. I asked for you to validate what I already think. And I just want answers that I kind of am already suspecting. And I'm just looking for you to pull all the sources that are going to further feed that to me. And so I get concerned about that, because now you layer in the kind of authoritative tone, the perception of comprehensive knowledge on all this stuff. And now instead of just somebody going, well, I searched for it and found this website, and maybe, yes, my personal biases is making me to believe that this is the end all be all answer. In the back of my mind, I kind of know I only picked the top search result and didn't really do my homework on this. And so now that's going to go away, because there's going to be this perception, well, Gen AI did all its homework on it, and this is the response it gave me. And so now I feel even more confident in my personal bias because Gen AI supports it. And I don't think we as a society have quite recognized that, like, AI is still just giving you what you want. Just because it sounds more comprehensive and adds a whole lot more filler into its answer, it's still just feeding you what you asked for. It's not a research partner that's there to actually challenge your thinking and make you think more comprehensively. And so I get concerned about that and how we're going to navigate that. And granted, I think we'll adapt, but I see a world where it makes us worse if we're not really careful. And I think for people listening and watching that, I would challenge you to think that way about, even if you're just doing basic search results. Remember, search results are designed to give you the answer that you want to hear. So if you say, tell me why this is what's going on, it's going to pull up results that tell you why that is, whether that's right or wrong or accurate. It's just going to give you that stuff. And so having that kind of checkpoint in our heads of going, oh, okay, well, I at least need to make sure that I'm doing the work to filter through that. I think we've got a lot of work to do to actually push ourselves with that. Now, the second part that is, like I said, it's in some ways borderline entertaining. In others, it's like, oh no, what are we getting into? Is if you listen to my stuff when Reddit got hooked up to the search engines, and that was a big chaos, which really resulted in some of the big search engines pulling back from its Gen AI search, was, hey, there's a lot of garbage out on the internet. And when you just suddenly say, give people the response that's best, how it's calculating what's best comes from a lot of different areas, and it can serve up completely wrong information to people and potentially harmful information to people. And those are some of the things that OpenAI is now going to have to dig into. And I'm really curious to see how they're going to approach and solve for this, because some of the other big providers learned the hard way that, oh, this will just be easy. We'll just have Gen AI give more comprehensive results. And they took some major backlash when all of a sudden it's like, oh, one Reddit user recommended, if you're feeling sad, jump off a bridge. Like, uh-oh, we better fix that. And so I'm curious how Gen AI or OpenAI is going to guard and safeguard and validate responses, and what kind of guardrails it's going to put in place. Because let me just tell you right now, in digging into some of this, I was like, well, you haven't done too great on your first pass, because if you go to OpenAI's way, it's still there as of today. I went and checked it today. If you go to OpenAI's announcement page, now you'd have to know what you're looking at. So do the exercise and you'll see what I'm talking about here, because you wouldn't catch it. If you went on there on the site, there's a demo of how it works and like an intro video, like, ooh, fancy, like this is how SearchGPT works. And you'd be like, wow, I'm so mind blown and how comprehensive it is. And it walks through a user saying, tell me about more music festivals in this area. And it's so comprehensive in its answer. But in the first 30-second demo video, the responses were wrong. One of the events, they asked a specific prompt, like what music festivals are during this time or something like that. And it lists them. And the top result is actually wrong. It was already passed. So already in their demo, which is on their site today, it's inaccurate in the information it's giving. And it just, to me, just highlighted, we're going to have to be even more careful than we were before with search results. Because again, maybe in the past you would say, tell me about this. And you might be able to, based on, looking at the results go, okay, well, if it's a website, music festivals, Boone County, whatever.org, you're going to be like, well, they probably have the dates right and the festivals. So I'm going to kind of trust it's a reliable source. Now Gen AI just says this and it's like, oh, here's a great festival in Boone County from these dates to these dates. And you're like, great, let's plan, let's do it. And then you go to find out, oh, I mean, I guess that is a real festival, but the date's passed and it's not even happening anymore. So thanks for your not. And that was the top recommendation. So little entertaining. I'd encourage you to go out and check it out. You'll see it's still on the site. It's like, the results are wrong on your demo video. So still work to do, which is probably why SearchGPT is still in beta. And again, will be interesting to see where things go with Gen AI and search. All right. Next up, a little more of a serious topic. If you have not heard about this, Elon Musk, which he's notorious for taking heat, but he's taking some major heat right now for a deepfake video that he posted on X or Twitter, whatever you're still calling it, of Kamala Harris. And it's a political campaign video that was created by a conservative, and it's supposed to be a parody. And if you watch it, and again, I honestly wouldn't even recommend going out to it because you're just feeding the algorithm with, this is what people want. But, if you watch it, it's clearly a parody, but it's a deep fake. And so before I get into this, let me just set the record straight on something, because I'm talking about a political topic and I'm going to be talking about the actual event. I don't want what you think you may know about me or whatever to cloud my really truly objective analysis of the situation based on what you think maybe my political allegiances will be. So let me just first of all say, everything I'm going to share is not based on any sort of political affiliation. I do not pledge my allegiance to the donkey or the elephant or the whatever other parties are out there. I don't, as much as I love America, I don't claim to pledge my allegiance to the United States. For those of you who know me, know my story, or have listened to any of my content, my allegiance is to Yahweh, the guide of the Bible. So I don't have a dog in the fight related to the political stuff. And if you ever want to talk to me about my political viewpoints or how it is, like many things, you'll find I have very complicated and nuanced responses, and it's based on a case-by-case basis, not related to anything. So me speaking about this is not in any way, shape, or form this is pro-liberal, pro-conservative. It has nothing to do with it. I really am focusing on just purely the situation, because it grieved me to see this whole thing. Truly grieved me, and not because of a political affiliation. The whole situation grieved me. So let's focus on what happened, because again, there's this deep fake video of Kamala Harris, and it's her, she's saying these things, it's all this other stuff, and it's Elon Musk posting it, and his post says, "This is great." And that's all it says. And when I watched it, I went, this is, first of all, just not cool, period. The video is very degrading to Kamala Harris. And I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, somewhere in between. I don't think it's cool to make any sort of content that assassinates a person's character, that takes pot shots at who a person is. There was nothing in the video about her policies or even specific behaviors that people have observed with her and how that, like, it had nothing to do with that. It just was purely a character assassination of who she is and what it means for her to be, the political candidate she is. And I just thought, what is this that we're doing? And it just, again, it grieved me that here, America, considered by many to be one of the leading countries in the world, we've created a political system that is nothing more than people just pot shotting at each other and doing this kind of stuff. And so to me, watching this, I just went, really? Like, this is what we do? But I think it's very easy for us to point the finger and say, well, it's them, but it's us as a collective. Where we are on the political end and how things are, it's us. We feed off of this kind of content. We fuel it. We engage with it. We do all this stuff. And I just want to say, I did not find it entertaining, and I think it's sad that we've reached a point as a society where just tearing someone down is this is great. It's not great. There's nothing great about it. I just don't care. It's not. There's nothing great about it, and I did not appreciate that one bit. And I think, you know, anyway, so I thought that was disappointing and grieving to be like, really, one of the leaders, and again, whether you like Elon or not, he's a well-known leader. He's a global leader. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of influence, and he's sharing tweets of videos, deepfake videos that are literally just assassinating somebody's character. And I think that should just disappoint us holistically. I think the other thing that really disappointed, and I will get to the technical side of this. I think the other thing that disappointed me, though, from a leadership standpoint was, you know, X has policies about how it feels about deepfake content and things that it says, hey, if you're doing this, like, you'll be banned, we will delete your content. And those policies, community guidelines say you need to make it clearly notated that it is deepfake content, that it is not the person. Because this was not like clips of Kamala doing certain things and then them being spliced together, which I still don't think. I think those are gross misrepresentations of people, but it's at least the person. And this was not that. So it was clearly a deep fake political video designed to assassinate her character. And there was no mention that this is what this was. There was no watermark on it saying that this is a deep fake. And granted, in this instance, if you watched it, you would have been like, there's no way that this is actually her doing it. I mean, some people might at first glance, but I think about the more subtle opportunities where what if somebody were to make that video that was close enough to be real, but not quite? And what would that do? And how would that send people over the edge? And so for him as the leader of that social media company to be doing that and not following his own guidelines, and then on top of it, to then like promote it, to me, it makes me angry on a very deep level when I see leaders go, well, you're not allowed to do this, and nobody's allowed to do this unless I like it or unless I want it, in which case I make exceptions. And to me, the hypocrisy of that, of, dude, you claim to have terms of service on this and you claim that this kind of stuff is dangerous and shouldn't be used for this. And then you go and you make a post about it that gets millions of views and all this other stuff. And yeah, you might go, oh, it's harmless. It's just a parody. It's not whatever. Well, first of all, assassinating somebody's character, regardless, is not okay. We should treat everyone with dignity and respect, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them. It's not cool. And secondly, who are you to decide that this isn't harmful? And what about the implications of, well, maybe it was, maybe somebody actually did see that and believed it as real, and you didn't follow any of your own guidelines. And so the hypocrisy of saying, this is what I expect from everyone else, but the rules don't apply to me, it's a terrible model of leadership. And I think that's something that every leader, which we all have, we're all leaders in some capacity, should be looking at ourselves going, am I doing things that I tell other people that they shouldn't do? And do I make exceptions when it caters to what I like, or when I think, do I let it slide because, well, it doesn't bother me or didn't really affect me, type of a thing. And I think that's not cool. Now, I think the deepfake itself, here's where I'll talk about the technology itself. This is, again, just a concerning example of how easy it is going to become and why we need to just be so alert to the fact that if you watch the video, it is Kamala Harris saying these things. There's video of her saying it, all this stuff. And could it easily be taken? And it's like, she would go, I never said any of that. That image, that likeness of me was not me. That voice was not me. Those words were never uttered from my mouth. And I never had anything to do with the creation of this video. And that, to me, is where I think about the technology. And these kinds of things happen all the time, which is why I wanted to address, I think, the underlying problems. Because if we don't fix that, AI is only going to exacerbate it, which is exactly what happened. I mean, have political smear campaign ads been a thing for a long time? Yeah. And it's sad that they should, and they shouldn't exist. And we should care about that, not just the fact, oh, it was a deep fake. So now let's care. Well, no, let's care about this at a fundamental level. And then on top of it, say, and it's even worse, the deepfake technology was used to make this happen, because that is a complete misrepresentation of a person, to use their likeness, their voice, their everything, saying things they never said and representing it as though they did. And so I was just, like I said, I was grieved by the whole thing and what it says about where we are as a society. And I would say, if I think that should make us all take a pause and go, hey, am I participating in this kind of stuff? Because if I am, maybe I need to actually look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, am I tearing somebody down just because maybe I feel like it's okay because they deserve it? Or, do I look the other way when it's something that doesn't really bother me, but I would be super upset about it if it offended me? Like, I think there's an opportunity for us to do that. And if you did, and you go, yeah, no, I actually agree that we shouldn't have done that. Well, then if you did participate in it, do something about it. Cause if you retweeted it, if you post, go delete the post and go, you know what? I'm not going to contribute to this kind of nonsense because it's not okay. Don't just say, yeah, other people shouldn't have done it, but I'm not really going to do anything, even though I did. So anyway, enough on that. But I think, again, a bit of a sad state of where we are, and an example of the kinds of things I think we're going to see more and more of as we continue moving forward, if we don't collectively say something and do something about it. And what that looks like for each and every one of us is going to vary. But we can choose to not participate in some of this stuff. Okay. So number 3, if you are, and I'm going to be talking about the Olympics, but not for the reasons that you might expect based on some of the headlines and all the hullabaloo going on about the Olympics and all this kind of stuff. So get ready for it. This is actually going to be an unexpected take on some of the stuff going on at the Olympics, which is AI surveillance. Massive, massive surveillance going on with the use of AI over at the Olympics. So if you are over there, you listen to this and you know somebody who is, you are going to get to experience firsthand how AI surveillance is being used to help, honestly, just digging into it more, mitigate a lot of the risks of that many people from that many countries, that many different perspectives in a competitive environment, all coming together in a very consolidated location. And this has been a problem that has existed forever, where it's like, well, how do we actually keep an eye on some of the real things that can happen? Yes, obviously there's the extreme examples where somebody wants to do something crazy, but then there's also just practical ones, like somebody falling down in a massive crowd of people and potentially getting trampled or pressed up against fences and being crushed because of this kind of stuff. And there's not enough police officers in the world to be able to monitor and stay on top of all this stuff. And so it becomes a ton of noise that they're now saying, you know what, we should be using AI for this. And so if you're trying to stay off the grid, Paris, France is not the place to be right now, because there are camera devices all over the place watching for this stuff. And I dug into it because I was curious how they're using it. And there's some fair critiques on, there's support for it, which, like I said, I think there are some very legitimate reasons why this can be super helpful. There's more stuff going on. There's more people going on. There's more video footage of things happening than any human being on the planet could possibly keep tabs on, or any police force could ever try and manage. So I understand it's like, so what do we do about it? And I think this is a situation where AI can be a really powerful tool to say, okay, how do we legitimately have not just eyes everywhere? Because eyes everywhere is only good if those eyes are actually cueing you. I mean, the whole point of seeing is so that you can make a decision and do something about what you're seeing. If that sight goes nowhere and it's like, oh yeah, well, we have video footage now of people getting trampled to death or crushed. Okay, like, well, too bad, so sad. Like they're already gone. Like there's nothing we can do about it. And I think this is where AI has some real potential to say, well, there are patterns, there are things we can be watching for. there are things that we can flag that will help us get in front of it and help us better utilize our resources and say, hey, we need to send police forces over here. We need to send an ambulance over here because we saw this thing happen and we got a notification and it made us aware that something needs to be taken care of. I think that can be really powerful. Some of the critiques coming around, though, and there are people who are really, I think, understandably concerned that, okay, how are these systems really going to be used? And will they continue being used long after the Olympics are done? And so, okay, the Olympics are done and you don't have this unsurmountable volume of stuff. Well, people go, well, it was kind of convenient to have these AI sensing devices all over the place that were watching for stuff. And now, you know what? Why don't we just keep these on all the time and try and catch this stuff? And what exactly is it looking for? And what are the implications of all of that? Because there is real bias and risk built into some of these things that, I can understand why people would go, I don't necessarily want AI systems just everywhere watching everything and potentially, and I get it's tense. And that's why I have mixed feelings on it. Now, one thing that I thought, based on some of the representatives from the company and some of the things I dug into about the surveillance systems that they're using, is that they are not designed to automate decisions. And so I thought, hey, in terms of like the human in the loop, the point of these systems is not necessarily to say, oh, I saw this, and so I'm, deploying police to this, or I'm automatically calling an ambulance based on this. What it's designed to do, the way this system in particular is set up, is to be set to watch for certain kinds of things and then bring those notifications up to a team that is specially trained to evaluate then what it's found and determine what actions to take. So I actually think, based on what I've seen, and again, I know there's going to be the people out there that are like, yeah, right. And it's like, well, I can't operate off speculation and hyperbole of what may be, but I can speculate off what I understand about the technology and what they're saying they're using it for, and how they are clearly laying out what their plans are and how it's being used, which I actually think it's a very healthy use of this kind of technology. You have a real problem on your hand, more people than you can possibly manage or even hire human beings to be involved with. You have real risks associated with this, the risk of people doing crazy things, people being angry, drunk, stuff like this, people being trampled. I mean, there's real legitimate risks that there's not enough people to watch out for. And hey, you know what? Cameras can catch some of that stuff, and cameras by themselves, even if you catch a video, there's not enough to do. So it's a real problem that you go, man, this is a scale problem. We don't have enough human beings to scale this. Legitimate use case for AI. And I was, again, happy to see that they go, and our goal here is not to have the AI systems make determinations about what to do. They have clearly invested in the training of the teams who are responsible for making decisions and taking action on that, of how to, review the notifications. And I'm sure there's feedback loops in place to better train the AI to identify false positives and stuff like this. At the same time, I understand the concerns that people have about us moving more to this hyper surveillance, world where we're being watched at all times. Now, personally, I think this is something that we probably is happening more than we realize anyway. If you're in any major city, I watch enough crime shows to know, like, people get caught on surveillance cameras all the time. The biggest challenge is that, half the time there's not enough eyes to see what's on the surveillance cameras, and the systems are disconnected, which, there's a lot of crimes that go unsolved, or a lot of crimes that go unaddressed because of that problem. And so I see the one side saying, hey, this helps solve that problem. I also completely understand and recognize the side and agree with the side that says, yeah, but our systems are extremely biased. And how is this thing trained? And what is it trained to do? And how is this going to be used to make sure that it's fair and ethical? And I think those are legitimate concerns that we're going to have to watch as more of this happens. And it'll be interesting to see how effective these systems are. Will it identify or catch risks before they would have been caught or that would have otherwise been missed? I think one of the hard parts in terms of proving the effectiveness is, like anything, when you're in the business of catching things before they happen, it's kind of like, well, how do you prove that it would have happened, type of a thing. And I think, what was that? What was that movie? Anyway, the movie I remember that was all about this, where they were predicting crimes before they happened. Minority Report. There it is. So anyway, I don't know that we're there yet, but yeah, if you're over in Paris right now, just know you are being watched by the AI teams. I'm also curious what they're doing with that data. I don't know that they're doing any personally identifiable information on that. I think it's largely aggregated. So I guess we'll see what happens and how that goes. But on to number 4. Came across this really interesting study from Upwork that was talking about how are things going with the addition of AI into the workforce and what's it doing for employees? Is it making them happier? Is it making them better? Is it making them more effective? And what it's finding is that AI is adding tremendous workload and burnout to people right now. So I wanted to talk about this one because I actually dug into the report, looked at all the details of it. So I'll give you a little context to what the report was. It was a study that was done by Upwork, which, if you're not familiar with Upwork, it's a company that specializes in gig work. If you're somebody who's graphic designer or whatever you are, you can go on Upwork and you can get gigs where people go, we aren't going to hire a full-time employee, but we need somebody to come in and do a specific project. And it's a pretty quick, efficient way to bring somebody on board really quick, have them do a specific task and move forward. And several years ago, there was a lot of talk about the gig economy that has since bubbled down a little bit, but that's what the company is. And so one of the things that, as I was looking at the report, I'm always curious when research comes out, because it's always like, okay, what is the bias that this organization that funded and created the research? And as you can imagine, Upwork, that's in the business of gig economy and gig work, it's very clear the report is biased towards, hey, this is why you should hire more freelancers and why this is a really important thing. So I think we have to take that into consideration. And just always remember, whenever you read a study or any sort of data, it is never fully objective. It's not just this is just the facts. There's always a bend to, well, what is the group that's putting this out trying to convince? And this is no exception. And that came through very clearly in the research. But what I thought was interesting is the workload and the burnout part actually wasn't as influenced by this bias, because it actually was an interesting kind of anomaly that they found through the research. So the research was 25, it was a decent sized study, 2,500 workers across the globe, 1,250 C-suite execs. There was a mix of 625 full-time employees and 625 freelancers. So kind of this contrast of senior leadership and then employees both on the freelance and on the full-time side. And what it found was, here's some of the biggest findings, and I'll talk about kind of my take on all of this, was it's no surprise to me, and if you read any of the headlines and even just the conversations I'm in, the study found 90% of C-suite execs have high expectations for AI to boost their productivity. So there are, and I think we are very much in this bubble right now where people's vision of what AI is going to do is a little not necessarily even a lot overinflated. There's this idea that just magically by adding AI, you're going to produce better results. And that came out in the data. I mean, 81% of those senior leaders said, yeah, we've increased our expectations on employees. And I'd be really interested, just even based on some of my advisory and coaching work that I've done, it's really interesting when you start to see like, whoa, sometimes the expectations are very realistic and you're like, okay, I mean, it's reasonable to expect you'd see some kind of gains. And other times you're like, wait, you thought that by adding Gen AI to this, like you were going to move from here to here. And so it didn't get into the detail on, well, like how much are companies and executives increasing their demand based on what they believe AI can. But it's, I mean, 4 out of 5 are saying, yeah, I'm expecting more from my employees because now we have access to this technology, which isn't completely unreasonable. I don't think it's completely unreasonable so long as those expectations are realistic and you're doing some of the other things. But the sad part in this whole thing was, and I think this is a message to any leader or anyone who's considering, hey, we hope to be getting more out of generative AI. Only 25% of the leaders and the employees who were surveyed, only 25% said there was any available training on how they were to use this technology. So most people have just been kind of told, hey, you've got this Gen AI thing, so be more productive. And I can just tell you from spending a whole career in human performance and development, you don't just hand people things and they figure it out. I mean, some might, but it's a very painful, inefficient, broken process. And so the fact that a lot of orgs are going, we expect more out of you now. Here's this thing. Now go be productive with literally zero support. I mean, it's no surprise that people are not finding what they were expecting out of it. I think the other part that was really sad that just goes to this is only 13% of the organization said they even had any sort of strategy for achieving the gain, which to me speaks to one of the biggest problems I see when it comes to AI is companies go, we're going to do the AI thing and it's going to make us better. And when you go, how? Like, what are you planning on doing? Like, where are you going to use it? Where are you going to apply it? What do you see it changing? Most people kind of go, what? Well, we're going to add AI. That's what I said. And it's like, that's not a strategy. A strategy is not saying we're going to use AI to become more productive. A strategy for using AI is we've evaluated our operations. We've identified these as some of the biggest risks. We've identified that, these are the scalability problems, and it is a scale problem that it can be easily automated. It's well documented, so we know what we're doing. We have training data to be able to create AI that can support that. And so as a result, we're going to do this. We believe we can, that's a strategy. And the fact that only 13% had any real strategy, and again, it didn't get into, so I'd be curious. I'd love to see the 13% who said, yeah, we have a strategy. I'd love to see where they are. The fact that 87% said, yeah, we don't really have any of that. Okay, of that then, of the 13, that 13%, I'd love to see the strat. What is your strategy? Because like I said, if it's like, yeah, we have a strategy. See, it says implement AI in operations and manufacturing. See, I'd go, that's not a strategy. So I would have a sneaking suspicion because these things follow very similar trends. And I've seen data on this related to skills in organizations, and companies recognize they need to do something about skills, similar to companies recognize they need to do stuff about Gen AI. And so then you dig into, well, how many of you have any sort of upskilling programs? Oh, what do you know? It usually is very similar, like 25%. Well, how many of you have real strategies for what you're going to do about those skill gaps? It's usually low double digits or single digits, about right. If you then cut even deeper into it and go, how many of these are actual effective strategies that outline the key things? Usually it's in the low single digits. So this is concerning because when you then look at it and go, it's no wonder 77% of employees feel that their workload is increasing because they've just been handed a new thing. They are not being trained on how to use it. There's no real clear path for what they're supposed to do with it, but they know they're supposed to do it, and they're probably being held accountable. Hey, you need to be doing AI because we have a strategy that says use AI. So did you do that? And people are going, I don't know what to do with it. Like, how do I do it? Do you have any strategy for what we're supposed to do? No, just do it. So is it any surprise that 4 out of 5 are going I am? And I'm curious, feel free to message me. I always am interested to hear from folks. Where do you sit in that? I'm actually really are you one of those folks who goes, yeah, I feel this existential pressure that I'm supposed to do more, but I'm just trying to keep up with what I'm doing. And now I've got this layered on top of me that's actually making me feel more stressed out, more burned out, because 71% feel burned out. So 77 said, hey, our workload's increasing, not reducing. 71% said they're feeling burned out. So only 6% of people said, yeah, the workload's increasing, but I feel good about it. So, I mean, we're talking single digits here of people going, I feel it's going up, but it's okay because I'm handling this well and it's all right and we're doing all right. And 65% were still struggling with even what they're doing today. Never mind all this AI stuff. They're like, I can't even figure out how to deal with what's on my plate. Now I'm getting this stacked on top of me. This is concerning, and I'm not surprised one bit. I will tell you, I was not surprised one bit as I dug into this. And like I said, if anything, I think I would be curious to dig even deeper into this. And this is where I'd love to hear from people. Like, what's your experience? Does this resonate with you or the people you talk with and interact with? Are they feeling similar? Are you feeling this way where you're like, good grief, like now I just feel like I have more to do and I have higher expectations. I'm not even sure what to do, because it's concerning. And we were already at a critical tipping point where people were just on the verge of collapse. And I think there was a lot of this promise that AI will be the infusion that you need to feel like you have your life back. And the data's showing, no, it's not. And like I said, I'm not surprised because I think there are some key things that when I work with people that we go through that's like, this is how you actually make sure this mitigates this problem, not exacerbates it. And since this is a one-time study, I don't know that they have anything to compare it with, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if it's gotten worse because we are in this stage where people don't really know what they're doing with this and it's causing major problems. One of the things coming out of the study that I agree with is that there's a need to look at new work models. But again, I didn't necessarily like the recommendation because it very felt biased towards, you know, what'll fix this? Gig economy, gig workers. Because it had some points in there that gig workers are, you know, handling the change better, which in some ways doesn't surprise me. They kind of have no choice. If you're a gig worker, you're like, I'm just figuring out what to do and trying to find the most efficient way to do it. And I don't have the bureaucracy of the company telling me what tools I can and can't use and all this other stuff. So it doesn't surprise me gig workers are doing it. I think, yes, maybe the way work models are happening needs to be reevaluated, but that's not just because of AI. It needs to happen because of work locale. It needs to happen for a lot of different reasons. But honestly, I think we need to really put a watch on this. And for senior leaders out there, first of all, one, you need to temper your expectations. Two, you need to put things in place to actually help make this transition. This is not a switch flip that you turn on that magically fixes this. And I am telling you right now, if you get this wrong, it is going to make your problems way, way worse. And I think back, I said a couple of years ago, I'm like, if we get this wrong, we're going to end up in a worse position than we're in today. And this study really is starting to validate a lot of that. And so I'm concerned about it. I am legitimately concerned about it. It's why I do a lot of the stuff I do. And gosh, if there's ways I can help, please let me know, because I really think I've seen where it goes well. And I can tell you, there's a way where doing AI right will actually dramatically improve these statistics. But right now, that is not the majority of what's happening. And that is call for concern, especially when we take into account some other factors that are also making worse the work world. Okay, I'll end there. The last one that I'll talk about today is another crisis. I shouldn't laugh about crises because I get it's a lot and people are struggling and there's just a lot going on. But I just feel like every headline is this is a crisis, it's an existential threat. And it's just leading to people being like, I don't even care anymore. Like everything is out to kill me and out to get me and going to be the end of the world as we know it. And even to my point before, like there's a way you can do this right, but you got to slow down, take the time and bring people along who actually can help you do that. But so this latest one is there's this rising, I have it on my list of things I was going to talk about a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't get to it, which is there's this growing concern that we're running out of data to train AI on. I mean, we've consumed all that there is. I've talked about the fact that we can only create new stuff so fast, with the exception of, well, we could make AI create synthetic data, but then you're feeding it its own tail. And so is that really going to solve it, or is it just going to eventually eat itself? But now what's making this problem even worse is a lot of the publicly available data. And if you've been watching the space at all, you know a lot of these media companies are going, hey, you can't just take our stuff and train your data. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago with the music companies going, no, 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 no. You can't feed all our music into your AI algorithm and then create a consumer product where you're basically selling AI generated media that's been trained on our stuff. So a lot of companies are getting wise to this and going, yeah, you kind of already suckered us once and took everything that we just had kind of put out there thinking no big deal. But now we're realizing what you're doing with it. And so I'm sorry, we're going to close the door on this a bit and say no more. You don't have access to this. You can't use this in this. And if you do, we're coming after you. And the AI companies are having to go, uh-oh. So they were already a bit strapped for, where do we go get new data? Because we've pretty much consumed what's already out there. And now these sources of new data are going, you can come get it, but you're going to have to pay us. And we're going to have to figure out a model by which you do it. And we're going to have a say in how it's used and all of this other stuff. And it's up to 28% of the sources that these AI companies are pulling from, a third of their data sources. So already it was limited. Now you chop off a third. And I think that's just the beginning. I think we're going to see that 28% grow even bigger as more and more companies go, no, I'm not comfortable with you taking our IP to train your stuff. And yeah, so where does that leave us? What do I think that means for some of the innovations, some of the exponential growth that we're seeing in AI? I think we still have a long ways to go before we hit the ceiling. I don't think, we've fully tapped out yet on this, even if that 28% grows to 50, 75, whatever, because we can create synthetic data that can continue training this. I don't know that we're going to see the exponential jumps based on the synthetic data. But I think we're going to see more of the deals with the media companies, which can be good for, economic growth, because it does mean, hey, you can't just make this multi-trillion-dollar product and not pay for the resources you built it on. So I think it's going to force us to think differently about it. And they're making money off of this. So they've got some money to spend. And I think it makes sense that we would say, no, you got to pay for that. So that's how we're starting to see this, is they are now starting to make agreements with some of these organizations, go, fine, we'll pay for this data. We are seeing the use of synthetics. So I don't see us hitting the ceiling just yet, but I'm not releasing it for a little while yet. But I have a conversation with someone where we're talking about, some of these orders of magnitude that are being proposed, where it's just like, we're just going to keep seeing exponential growth in this. I am more and more hesitant to say I think that's an accurate assessment of what we're going to see, not only for reasons like this, where the training data is just kind of becoming less readily available, and we can't, you think about it, we just had a literally what seemed like an unlimited fuel source to pour into this fire. Well, that doesn't keep happening. So that's going away. But I think some of the other things are, even just the way we've engineered and built some of these AI models, they're going to tap out. And like any innovation, you think of when the Pentium processors first started going, it's like, oh, do you have the 133? Do you have the 266? Do you have and you had to have the new one, because if you didn't, eventually you kind of hit a point where you go, I mean, okay. And we already are starting to see that with some of the large language models. So I think I predict we're going to start to see a bit of a leveling, unless, not just that the data is the problem, because we are coming around. There are ways around that. I've talked about the power restrictions. I think we're finding ways to become more efficient with that. But I think really some of the engineering and how these models are built are very limited in what they can do and how far we can really squeeze them. I think there's still plenty of, juice in the sponge to squeeze out. So by no means do I think we're going to hit an AI winter anytime soon, but I think we're the predictions that this is just going to blow through the roof and show no signs of stopping, this is to me just one indicator of where we can expect things to maybe slow down a little bit, which maybe based on my previous point of how burned out and exhausted everybody is, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's time we slow down and focus more on adoption and integration instead of constantly trying to push things further and further and further. So that's it. That's what I got for you this week. Hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks again for listening, watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you on the other side.